Welcome. This is For Better and Worth,
the podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young. And we're so glad you joined us today.
All right, y'all, come on. Let's get into it. Hey, folks, we're back at it again.
Yes, and you have been wanting to have this conversation for a while, so this is going to be fun, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know about fun, but I think in retrospect it might be fun. But, thanks for listening. Joining back up with us for the For Better and Worth podcast.
Yes, and we are talking all things kids. And I don't mean kids and money. I actually mean having an actual child and being prepared or not prepared for having that child, financially speaking. Because honestly, in any regard, health-wise, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, however you want to put it, I think we're never really fully ready for these kids to arrive.
Look, we talk about relationships, and you really can't talk about relationships without talking about money. And then when you start talking about kids, I feel like there's absolutely no way you can talk about kids and not talk about money. So, for those out there who are just joining in, becoming listeners, because we know you're hitting that subscribe and that like button.
That's right.
Ericka and I, we actually, we got married and we had this grandiose plan. We were going to get married. We were going to spend 5 years just doing our thing. We were going to travel and, we had moved to a new place. So we had this, I thought it was a great plan. 5 years of us just, getting to know people, because I tell you one thing about relationships. You don't know people until you put all your stuff together, and then you have to figure life out. I don't necessarily encourage you to do that before marriage, but I know people do, and I'm not knocking what you do, but, once you put all your stuff together, you're like, who are you?
Right. I mean, and that's huge in terms of, that desire to get to know one another on a deeper level without adding another human to that equation. And man, 5 years was, we thought, like the perfect amount of time to get to know. I mean, we dated for 2 years actually before we, said I do. But having another 5 years of living together and figuring out the money stuff and, like you said, traveling and enjoying each other's company and, learning married life and having a fight and knowing you can recover. Like having all of that without the addition of a small human, that would have been nice.
Yeah, I thought 5 years would have been good. But so let's fast forward a little bit for you all, because we got married, and I think, 7 months into our marriage, it was like, bam.
Yeah, a sister girl didn't feel good. I was really confused, to be honest, because I had taken some antibiotics. Bing, bing, bing. Anyway, remember that. And I thought I was getting better, but I was experiencing some different symptoms. Like my mother had come to visit us for like a week, and I couldn't take her to the airport because I was sick, literally like nauseous, and I just did not feel well. And that is, it was uncommon for me to feel that way. And then some brilliant person, don't know who this was, but someone said, you should take a pregnancy test. Let me just tell you, that was not myself and that was not my husband. I have no idea who said that, but I looked at them like they was crazy. And that began the journey to think about the fact that this could be a reality.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody is out there like, well, weren't you guys did you have some protective measures in place? Yeah, she was on the pill. We were part of that 0.1%.
Right. Well, you know what? Antibiotics don't work when you're on the pill. So.
Well, no. Flip that around. The pill doesn't work when you're on antibiotics.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So the pill didn't work while I was taking the antibiotics for the issues that I was having previous to that, right? So here I am, and we're still having fun, and a sister girl got pregnant. Oh my gosh.
So look, this might not have been the conventional way where we would have been planning, like financially to be ready to have kids. And I know this question comes up a lot of the times, like, man, are you ready? Are we financially ready? We're trying to get out of debt. We're trying to save money. And I think the short answer is nobody is ever really ready. And in hindsight, I can sit here now and I have a story I can tell about it. But, in hindsight, I think it was one of the greatest things that actually happened to the both of us,
Yeah.
And so I remember the day we found out after we took that test. I actually was like, oh my God. I was like, boo. I was like, I can't believe it.
Literally.
I
I
think,
fell on the floor. I was on the floor crying. I mean, honestly, I was, eating carpet at the time because frankly, we got married when I was 22. I found out I was pregnant when I was 23. And then I had faith when I was 24. And I really thought I was too young because the game plan that I had in my head did not include having a baby at 24. So that was honestly petrifying.
yeah, I think because we were in an apartment and we were really just figuring it all out. We had
Hmm.
just consolidated our accounts and debts, and we are just trying to figure things out. And then, boom, right on top of all of that is, it's not like one of those small things that happen. It's like this big boulder, like just dropped on top of you. Like now you got a kid that's being added to the equation. And
Yeah.
so, were we a little scared? I have to admit, I was terrified
Yeah.
because I had just signed up to take care of myself and a wife. Now I have to take care of, myself, a wife, and a child. And I say take care of because, I'm just driven and wired to, make sure I go out and provide for my family. Even though Erica was working and she was providing also because she made income and it was a partnership. But I think people are always trying to figure out the best way,
Yeah.
to plan versus, the way that we went about
Yeah.
having children.
And I think a lot of people nowadays are waiting as long as they can, honestly, for children. And some people are opting to not have kids because they understand the responsibility. And honestly, I respect that. I respect you knowing what works for you, but we just did not have the luxury, let's say. And I think God, in his infinite wisdom, knew that this child needed to be born. And so we just did not know. And we had to get on his game plan versus try and remain on our game plan. And that shift took a little bit of time, I would say, mentally.
What I think is funny is like, we talk about, relationships and money and really all aspects of that on this podcast. And I find that people are really trying to invest in finding first a relationship.
Hmm.
And, we've got friends, we got family members that they've been waiting a long time or they've been through a lot of relationships and they haven't found that right person. So I feel like people are getting older. So it kind of organically is forcing them to wait to have children to some degree. But it's just funny that once you find that person, you get in that relationship, it's like, okay, we got to get pregnant. We got to have a baby. And you think about reality TV show, all these people trying to go and date and, find their mate. It's like a big thing that comes up in those shows is,
Mm,
oh, okay, when are we going to have a baby? A year, 2 years? It's like,
mm.
my clock is ticking. I got to get going. And so it's just so funny, like, to be at this point in life where we have had, one child, which we didn't plan that way, but has been a tremendous blessing.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about, child number 2 and how we had a little more planning attached and
Yeah.
associated with child number 2.
Okay, but I got a sidebar question for you, Chris. Because you talked about reality TV. Let's talk about what is your guilty pleasure around that? Like what specifically are you talking about in terms of these shows? I just want to know. Inquiring minds want to know what you watch.
Look, look, it's not the show you're thinking about, but I'm gonna just keep it real with you. Below Deck, That is my show.
Okay, they not having no babies on Below Deck, okay?
I know, but I love the drama that they have on there.
Right, right.
It's hilarious, and I love to travel, so I like to see the, places they go.
Yeah.
And I'm just planning that one day,
Come on.
we're gonna charter one of those,
Let's go.
mega yachts, and we're gonna be like, okay, we want this for dinner.
I love that.
So I don't know, maybe it's just a little vision building.
Come on, I love it.
But I don't know. You may be talking about what, Love Is Blind or.
Yeah. Well, okay, wait a minute. So don't be taking my No. Okay, so that's my second tier. My first tier, guilty pleasure is Married at First Sight. That is the one that I like the most. I have been watching Married at First Sight for years now, and I'm a huge fan, even if they aren't 100% successful with these people staying together.
True. I guess I become a default fan because, I want to spend time with you, so I watch it. I think those marriages, they be like set up for ruin from the beginning.
But the crazy thing is, a lot of these people end up wanting kids like quickly, and they are ready, whether they're 29 years old or 35, or I've seen few couples that are like mid 20s. I'm like, it's okay to wait. Don't try and rush, into it. But there have been some successful ones. So, I love it when they actually work out. So
I think when you're starting to get into your late 30s, 40s, I'm starting to think about, look, I want to get this done because I don't want to be like 60, 65 and, trying to, have a college graduation and I'm looking like, I'm in retirement.
Right.
So
exactly.
Some of those cases I can understand, but I guess to get back to the subject, I'd ask you this, when we found out, I think you said it already, but maybe you could talk a little bit about it. Were you scared? Were you scared to have kids?
Yes, I was terrified because I didn't know what to do. We were 2,000 miles away from our parents, and so that was scary. And I didn't really consider the financial aspect. I don't think that that's what I was afraid of necessarily, but it was being away from what I consider to be the biggest source of help, which would be mom. And then, our moms were so far away. And then on top of that, truly the unknown. The thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about is that pregnancy itself, having a child, literally the birth, is scary, as well as keeping this tiny human alive. And so while I knew I wasn't in this by myself, I, as a woman, realized how scary that whole process could be. And the thing that I really didn't like was I just felt I was too young for this. Like, it forces you to grow up a bit, especially when you take that on very seriously. And I really wanted to wait until I was closer to 30. My second child, ideally in my mind, when we had her, was probably the time I wanted to be having the first one. And so I was afraid of all of that. And that forced me to do some research, I would say, and to align myself with other people who were actually, having kids or who had kids as well. I had to shift myself mentally. But I think you had a really pivotal moment that I think would be really helpful to share. I think that a lot of people may not have mentors or people in their life that can speak into them, but you did. And I just want you to speak into that a little bit because I think that shifted a lot for us.
Well, I'll say this. I'll say two things. The first thing is, this isn't the serious part, but the first thing is, when you have a kid and you go to the hospital and you got all the help and, you got nurses coming in and out, that's all cool. You're like, man, okay, this is cool. But the funniest part is when they're like, all right, it's time to go. And they get you and the baby and they basically kick you. You could feel the shoe on your back as they're kicking you out the door. And you get home and you're like, well, hold on. We left. It was Ericka and I when we left. Now we got a third person. Like, what are we supposed to do?
Right.
That is the craziest thing about having kids is like, they do not come with an instruction manual. And all you got to do is you got to figure it out. Like, are they hungry? Are they sleepy? Or are they poopy?
All of it.
all that stuff. But that's a side note. But I was just thinking about that as you were talking. Like, man, I remember that. It was crazy how got home was like, man, I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from the perspective of my reaction, sure, I had a lot of nervousness because we were young professionals early on in our career, out of college recently. So we were trying to establish, a basis for ourselves. And I think that's what made me get real serious about eliminating debt and saving and trying to do some different things. But I'll tell you, it wasn't until like we went to a church and we were active in that church and we had our bishop, he came in town and he said he wanted to talk to me. And I was like, what do you want to talk to me for? Like,
He don't know me like that.
right. Bruh, you don't know me. Like, what do you want to talk about? And so I went and talked to him and he was like, son, you better support that woman and, love on her. And he just started saying things to me and challenging me to step forward and step into the manhood that God had offered me the opportunity to enter into. And just the things he was saying to me from, a spiritual perspective, like things would be fine. Things were going to work out. But, stand into your leadership role as, a leader in the relationship. And once he said that to me, it really did begin to change my mindset because, look, this can help anyone, whether you're a believer or unbeliever. But, as you guys know, we're believers. And I just trust that when God is speaking through the man of God to you, that's the time to open your ears and listen.
Yes.
And so I chose to just listen to what he was saying to me. And it really just changed my attitude and it changed my mentality.
Mm.
And whether you're a believer or not, I think changing your attitude and your mentality, it will determine whether you get good outcomes or bad outcomes. Not that you can control them either way, but how you approach it, I think that will determine, some of what you get from it because what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So that really was one of the things I think that was pivotal to help me from, being like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was one of those characters just walking around like a zombie, like I didn't know what was going on.
And you know what? I felt there the change in a calm from you, right? Like that you never really said specifically what he told you to me. But I felt a shift in a place in you that relaxed. And also, you never said to me, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I don't know what I'm going to do. You never spazzed out on me, right? Like, I definitely fell on the floor and was like, ah. But you became the rock, right? And that was what I needed because emotionally, for 9 months and beyond, honestly, I probably was all over the place. So that was super helpful. And we were still in debt at this time. Like, we had a lot of debt. We really hadn't even started our debt-free journey. And so I'm really curious on your end, Chris, like, do you feel like we had enough money to actually support more people in our household at that time? I mean, that's huge. And I think that some people feel like being financially prepared is a prerequisite to having children. And so I'm curious on how you felt the money played into that.
So here's what's funny is this is a little relationship nugget I'll drop for you all. When you're going through challenging or difficult times, you can't have two people flipping out.
Right. Yes.
Like two people can't get upset about the same thing.
True statement.
If one person is like on 100, somebody has got to tone it down and be the voice of reason.
Yes.
And if the other person is going, 100, then the other, the other part of the relationship, somebody has to always have a level head
Yes.
in a situation. And so that particular thing, after the bishop spoke to me, I was like, you know what, I got to be level headed because there's a lot of uncertainty. And when you ask about the money, I think we were very fortunate as a young couple, young professionals, because we didn't have separate, accounts. We had one joint account. We were both working professional jobs. We were making, a decent income at that point, even though we had a lot of debt. And we were struggling to kind of keep it all together when you think about the debt that we had and, the life we were living, and we had, rent and all these different things. And so, do I think we had enough money? I mean, I don't necessarily think we had enough money, but I knew that we could figure it out
Yeah.
and we could make it work. I knew that if we just decided that we were going to do some things differently, I had different motivations at that point too.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only had I just got a new wife, but now I'm like, man, I got a little baby girl. So I was like a Papa Bear, like, okay, I got to make sure I provide for my child. And if that means that I've got to sacrifice something, I was willing to do that. And so it just changed my whole perspective. And I don't think I ever thought about the money per se. What I started to think about was like, man, I got to go out here and I got to get busy.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get busy making money. I got to get busy, going up, the progression at work. And I think that just lit a fire under me to go out and, get on the corporate journey and, get on the debt reduction plan, because it was shortly after that we like got on board with reducing debt. It was almost like, boom, baby came, boom, we got on this debt reduction plan. It was like, nope, we're about to do this. No, we're not doing that. We're gonna do. It's like the plan just dropped in place, and I think that's just how God works.
Mm-hmm.
He once your attitude aligns and shifts, then He can give you the next steps. Because if He had said, okay, you guys are gonna have a baby, then you're gonna get on this debt reduction plan, then you're gonna start saving, you're gonna start doing this, we wouldn't have been able to take all that in.
Yeah. I think that's good because I fully agree that the baby forced us to get serious. She came, Faith's arrival changed our finances. And I've never thought about it like that, but I do think that it forced us to be more responsible. Like you said, we had already, combined our accounts. And even as you were saying that, I've worked with a lot of people with their finances, and one of the bigger hills to climb in a relationship is merging the money, is being one with how you manage the money, not in the daily tasks and the tracking and budgeting, but really in marrying the accounts, like the unification of how the money flows into the household and then how it is used. That is huge. And we had already tackled that. And because we didn't know any different. And that was the honest truth. I think some of the things that we did, it was because we didn't know any different. I do believe we had discussed that piece of it, but the reality of having to figure out how to budget or get out of debt and all that, that amplified when we had that kid, because we knew at some point we were going to need to pay for childcare and all of that kind of stuff. And so everything, when they say it just got real, yeah. As soon as we had her, it had just got real.
Look, I want to set the stage for you all too, because I don't want you to be listening and think like, man, these guys are perfect. No, we made a whole bunch of mistakes
Oh
after
yeah.
all of this.
Oh yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
And so I'm just keeping it 100, keeping it real. We made a bunch of other mistakes, even though we got serious
Yeah.
and our mentality shifted, because, we started talking about kid number two.
Okay.
So, what was different for you with kid number two?
Well, first of all, we actually got a chance to plan. So our kids are just about 4 years apart, and I didn't want them to be too much further apart than that. And so we actually started trying to have a kid. So we planned for her arrival. And so that was the bigger difference, is that we just didn't allow that to happen at some point. We actually were able to wait 4 years. Ah. But the other part that was different was that we were further along in our relationship, and we were settled in a way that we wanted to be before we had child one. So I think that comfort level that we had with one another made it fertile ground to literally just be able to enjoy another human, and also relax and know that we actually kept another human alive for 4 years. Fantastic. We know we could do it again. And so I think that that was super helpful. But we were also pretty darn close to getting out of debt. Now we did, this was one of those things, that we had a little diversion, but I think that we were much more further along in our financial journey, and again, there was a comfort level. I was not afraid, I was not worried. That peace of mind was huge in how we were able to move through having that second child, for sure.
So here's what's crazy. I'm gonna talk about the mistakes because
Bring it on.
like we were in an apartment and we had this first child, and while we were pregnant, we were like, okay, we gotta get out the apartment. We need to buy a house. Here we are, two young people in a new city, and all the craze in that city was like, you got to go build a house. So we went and built, a nice little starter home, and literally we walked. The baby was born, and we walked into that house right before she was born. But we're talking about child number 2 now. So child number 2, we're planning for it. We're in this house. We had got smart. We had got a 15-year mortgage, and so we had shifted things around. But no, we had to go. We like, well, we don't have enough space here. We need to get a bigger house, and this car isn't good enough. We've got to get a big old SUV.
It was that car, man. It was that car.
Well, I think it was, that's back in the day. We had to get a Yukon,
And we had to get rims on that car too.
Right.
Let's talk about that part. I don't want you to forget that we put rims on a car your wife was driving primarily. I ain't care about no rims.
that's a whole nother story.
I ain't care about them rims. I was looking good, but I didn't care.
We had to put 20s on the truck, and then we had the second baby, and we were like, okay, we got to buy another house. So then we go and we build another house, and
we just thought we were balling at one point, and I think that's a thing that a lot of people do is when they have kids, they use their children as an excuse to accumulate more. And that is a pitfall that people can easily fall into. Oh, I got to get a safer vehicle, or I got to get a bigger house. Oh, I got to get this, that, and the other. And these are the things that keep people in debt, keep you strapped financially, and add stress to your life.
So here's the craziest part is like we had our second daughter, Olivia, and then we bought another car like 2 years later, and we were out of debt. Like we got that car paid for. Only debt we had was our mortgage. But then we went out and bought this big old house that, looking back at it now, thinking about it then, I was like, man, we really couldn't afford that house.
Yep.
And we were out there like trying to figure out how we gonna pay this mortgage.
Yep.
But we got this house, and we had paid our car off, and we had just got out of debt.
Yep.
And then we go and buy another house that we built that was bigger, that was like 3.5 times the cost of the first house. Like, what were we thinking?
Yeah.
Here we are, like these young 20-somethings, like out here, like, yeah, we just out here we not balling on the budget. We just out here just like balling.
Yeah. And you know what? They will lend you the money because they will think your income can support the mortgage on a 30-year fixed. And like that was the thing. And they said we could, so maybe we can.
We did.
Yes, right? And that, like, the biggest thing that I say to people now is don't make decisions based on what someone else says, be it your family, be it a mortgage lender. Don't make decisions based on somebody else's input. Make decisions because you know it's the right thing for you.
Look, and that's the good thing is I feel like all of these experiences have helped us be at the place we're at today. And we just approach this decision making from a very different, place. And, God was on our side because we were able to, continue to live a life and, take a couple vacations and care for our kids. But that child care was no joke because it wasn't a matter of, we both needed to work.
Yeah.
To, make sure ends were met and, things were taken care of. So it wasn't like, we had options, but had we done things a little differently, we could have had so many more options. And, God just blessed us along the way that allowed us to continue to, move along and, make sure we were cared for in a great way. But, it's one of those things. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I really think that in regards to our kids, this is the one place that we rely heavily on our relationship with God. And so um that is, that relationship got us through and continues in child rearing to be the a number one thing that keeps us moving forward. Um so you know what? Most people, on average, I would say, have their first child when they're 26. And I thought I was like super duper young. And I know people have kids when they're teenagers and when they're young people and before they get married and all of the things. I get it. I get it. But I wanted to be like 29 or 28, and so I really felt very young, but in hindsight I really wasn't. Like nowadays people are having children at any time. And so I'm really curious. I mean, what I really think is important for us to talk about is, are people waiting because they feel like they have to hit some type of financial mile marker, or do you feel like whenever you ready to have kids, go ahead and have them?
so I would say that, look, here it is. We've got daughters that one is out of college now, one is a freshman in college. And I feel like we're young people and we can still we're at the peak earnings in our lifetime. So we could do a lot of different things now. And we're both physically in great shape and we can do a lot of things with our kids. So to me, I thought it was good for us because now it's a whole different phase of life that we're able to enjoy. But I think if you're looking and you're listening to this and you're thinking about, well, what should I do? You know, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you got to make that decision for yourself. But I think be thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
Get some things in place. If you have debt, come up with a plan. If you have savings, but you need to get more savings, maybe you give yourself some time to get some of those things in order before you bring another individual into your relationship.
Mhm.
Think about where you're at in your relationship.
Yeah.
Is the relationship, early on? Is it established? So those are the areas I would say consider those things.
Mhm.
Make sure you got, some at least 3-4 months of savings in place. So if somebody goes on leave, maternity, paternity leave, and you want to take a little more time, maybe you got some savings you can pull from to spend some more time bonding.
Yeah.
If you have some debt, maybe, give yourself 6 months to try and eliminate some of that debt before you introduce that dreaded child care factor, because I know it was bad then, but I can only imagine now what
Ooh.
child care costs. So those
Yeah.
are all things that you have to consider. But I say, there's nothing like, I look back to those pictures of, our baby girls like laying on my chest and we're asleep together. Man, I remember those moments, and those moments are
Yeah.
precious. So
Absolutely.
I would never take those away.
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing in thinking about having a child is making sure you're thoughtful. Like you said, make sure you can take care of yourself, right? So the very first thing is look at your budget and make sure you making ends meet, because to add another human is expensive monthly. I mean, with or without childcare, we're talking additional food, additional clothing, additional. I mean, things will happen, and so make sure you can take care of yourself before you try and take care of another human. I think the two things that are really important. You touched on parental leave, you know, be it maternal or paternal leave. I want people to make sure they got health insurance, because babies are expensive out of pocket. Period. Done. Hands down. That's thousands of dollars. If you don't have health insurance, that's coming out your pocket. So make sure that you have that. Plus, you got to be able to continue to take care of said child when they arrive. And then discuss what is going to happen after the leave of absence, right? So discuss whether or not, like, if somebody wants to stay at home, great. Make sure you can afford to do that. Make sure that the bills can continue to get paid if one person decides to stay at home. If both people are going to work, make sure you can afford, like we talked about childcare. Like, discuss that. And I would say discuss it prior to having the child or getting pregnant or what have you. If you're planning, you might as well talk about all the things. You might as well talk about all of it. Don't wait till you're pregnant to start talking about all of it, because then you only got 9 months, right? So I think it's important to discuss, your health insurance, your leaves of absence, and then what happens after the fact, because you want to be on the same page where that's concerned and thinking the same thing. And perhaps, sometimes women, when they have their child, they're like, dude, I'm not ready. I'm not going back to work, or I need some more time. I mean, honestly, you may want to consider that option. I didn't have that at the time. Like, I had to go back to work. But I think that if you're planning, you might as well talk about it, right? Because some folks might say, I want to be off work until, you know, preschool age. And those are huge financial decisions. It's not just a parental decision.
So we always ask you, is it worth it? And to me, I say yes, it's absolutely worth it, because there's nothing like the joy that creating a family and establishing, your own tribe can bring.
Yeah, that's good. And I would say for us, it was worth it to start early too. Like, honestly, we're on the other side of that, and like you said, we're young, we can still go off and do stuff, we're in good health. And so I think it was absolutely worth it to start early. I was petrified in the beginning. God had his plan, and when we lined up, he made it all work out.
Yep. Starting early was definitely worth it for us. And these kids are a blessing, and it's just fun to come alongside them and, watch them grow and mature. And, I get excited about the next phase.
Yep.
Grandkids no time soon.
Please,
Okay?
Lord, please not yet.
Let's just be clear that, nobody's going to be calling me grandpa for a long time. 'Cause I'm going to be like, no, you don't, you got me confused. So, but yeah, it was worth it. And so, we're so glad you guys, keep pressing that like, keep pressing that subscribe.
Yes.
And that you're coming back and you're hearing us. And, we've got more for you lined up in the future.
That's right. We're so glad that you joined us, and we can't wait to come back and share some more about what we have going on here at For Better and Worth.
Thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all your support, so be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up for our email on forbetterandworth.com.
Till next time, we're out of here.